Hi, I'm your host, Marsha Florence for Just Ask. Today we have with us Visually Impaired Information Center, Inc. Hurry back and join us. Hi, I'm your host, Marsha Florence for Just Ask. Today we have with us Visually Impaired Information Center, Inc., President Gary Gaynor, and Vice President and Publisher Kathy Fleischner. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Gary.
Hi, Marsha.
Glad to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Listen, I'd like to know something about what the title is, Visually Impaired Information Center, Inc. Where did it come from, and what does it mean?
Gary and I incorporated in the fall of '95, and when we were trying to decide the name of our corporation, what we wanted to do is make sure that it said something about what we wanted to do. And the whole focus of what we do is disseminate information for the visually impaired. And that's basically how we came up with the name.
Okay. And in the event that you came up with the name, what type of services is it?
Here?
Well, our primary focus is to publish and distribute the Directory of Visually Impaired Services, and to have a phone number that people can call in and find out information. So it's very hard when you do come across the problem of becoming visually impaired or blind of sources to be able to call, and so we're trying to address that problem.
Okay. Well, Gary, can you give us a little history on yourself?
I was diagnosed in 1976 with retinitis pigmentosa, which most people know it as RP, and it's a degenerative type disease that in most cases your vision you start losing first you have night blindness, and then you lose your peripheral, and it eventually tunnels down to no vision at all. When I was diagnosed, my doctor told me I'd be totally blind in 3 years. Now, that was 22 years ago, and luckily I still have some useful vision. Some people have RP that it goes the other way. It starts, their central vision loses first, and then it goes out to the peripheral. So they're different cases.
Okay. So over a period of time, it takes place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. However, you still work every day and hold a normal, well, what they call a normal life. So, well, I don't know what normal is.
Normal, yeah, right.
Okay.
I have what I think is a normal life. I'm retired on a long-term disability, but the directory and the Visually Impaired Information Center have become a full-time job, even though it's all volunteer. It's Kathy and I, it's a totally volunteer project, and just something that we felt led to do.
Okay.
One of the reasons we started the Visually Impaired Information Center is because the years after Gary was diagnosed, it took a very long time to find out that there were so many sources out there, so many different things that were available to the visually impaired and blind. And so Gary thought, if this is happening to me, this is probably happening to a lot of people. They are not aware of the hundreds of organizations and services and activities that have been created specifically for the visually impaired.
Right.
And so that's what we want to do, is make it available so that people know that these helpful things are out there.
Okay, can you give us an example of some of the agencies or programs that you all have?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the directory is 15 categories, so it starts with books, magazines, and libraries, places to get books on tape or in large print or braille. Then we move on to computers and electronic equipment, for places to get large print programs or speech programs for your computer, and education and rehabilitation section, and government agencies, low vision aid companies.
Okay. That's a lot.
Yeah, and my favorite is recreation.
Recreation.
Because I was a skier before I lost my vision, and then found out later that there was a ski club available for the blind. And it was through the friends that I made there that I started to learn about the many resources that were available that I hadn't found out about until I stumbled across a ski club.
Okay. Isn't that something when, people are unaware of most of the services that are out here, and they do exist. You kind of wonder, well, if they're unaware of them, how do the services exist?
Right.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
And one of the things Gary and I talk about a lot is if you don't know what questions to ask, how are you going to know what's available? And a perfect example is when Gary went to his ophthalmologist and he was diagnosed. An ophthalmologist isn't going to say, "Oh, and by the way, do you ski?"
Right.
There just happens to be, Optical Illusions, which is a blind ski club. So what ends up happening is that information just kind of stops, and unless you get in the loop, you don't find out about it.
So once you connected with one agency, was it easier to find more and more, or how did you go about
Not
doing
necessarily.
Right.
And that was another problem. I mean, you can get connected with an agency, but they have a tendency to give you information that's specific to their
Okay.
to their agency. And so what we want to do is we don't make any recommendations and we don't refer people. But what we do, Gary answers the phone every day in for our organization. And what he might do if someone calls is give them several different pieces of information, and then we send them a copy of the directory so that they have all the information. There's almost 700 sources of information in the directory, so there's a lot of information in there that's helpful.
Now, if that person is totally blind, does the information come in Braille?
Yes.
Okay.
Braille
Okay.
and cassette tape and computer disc.
Okay.
And what we have here is a large print version, which is what they consider a 14 font, and that's a large print.
Right.
So it's available in any format that somebody would need. We have it available for them.
Okay.
And we're actually also in the process of having a website created. So soon we'll be able to have
Wonderful. Okay.
people be able to
Now,
access
you all
this
are
image.
nonprofit, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So your funding sources, was it hard to get funding to back this particular project up?
Well, yes, it was. We've been helped by a lot of great people. We have on the back of the directory is our Founders Society, the people who donated when the directory was only an idea, and that believed in it to help us along. And then we have a number of ways. Whenever we send a copy out to someone that is visually impaired, or a family member or a friend of a visually impaired person that's just looking to help them, we send a copy of the directory out with a donation request letter. We immediately get the copy out, and then we just ask them to help us, and a lot of people have. But then we have Lions clubs in the area that have supported us all over the state, and different foundations, and what else would you like?
And we have also written a couple of proposals for grants, and we've been very fortunate to receive some help that way.
Okay.
Excuse me. Our biggest fundraiser was Kathy's idea, brainstorm, and all her hard work. We had a garage sale last year that people donated merchandise, well, 2 years ago now, isn't it? And that we raised over $2,300 from a garage sale.
This was a
in her
very
backyard.
large garage
Right.
sale.
That's a lot of hard work for
Yes.
a garage sale. Okay. Okay. Now, if I were to call you and tell you that I have a 10-year-old son that's legally blind, and yet he wants to be involved with some type of, say, activities, what would you refer? Could you
As far as
refer-
recreational type?
Yeah, could you refer me to something, or tell me what's in the booklet or something? I mean, I don't have the book yet, and I
Right.
just want to know.
Right. Well, there are a number of visually impaired youth camps around the state and the country where they could go. All of the not all of the recreation, but the downhill skiing. I always go back to that.
Okay.
There's a water skiing function. Rock climbing, horseback riding.
Beeper ball.
Yeah, beeper ball. We're trying to get that
Archery.
started again. Archery.
Beeper ball.
Right.
Okay.
And so
Well,
there.
tell her a little bit about beeper ball,
Yeah,
because that's
I
fun.
was going to ask.
Yeah.
Well, it's faded a little bit, and they actually need some younger kids to get involved. It's everyone plays with a blindfold so that it puts everyone on an equal plane, whether you're visually impaired or blind, and you only have a first base and a third base, and the pitcher is actually on your team, so that you take a practice swing, so your pitcher has an idea of where to pitch the ball, and then the ball actually has a beeper in it. And so if you hit the ball, then it's up when you have to run. If the ball is hit to, say, the left field side, you have to
Okay.
run to first base. If it's hit to the right field side, you have to run to third base. And they'll pull a cord and the base buzzes so that you know where to run. And the way you get out is the ball is beeping now as it's going out into the field. And the fielders, if they pick it up before you reach the base, you're out. And if you
Okay.
reach the base first, it's a run that way. You're not out there running first to third or anything. And there are some pretty good collisions at
That'll
times.
keep you, that'll keep you pretty busy
Right.
trying to track down the beeper ball. Now I know what beeper ball is. Okay, last year I asked what was rugby. Now I know.
That's right.
Now I know what rugby and beeper ball is.
But they have
Okay.
water skiing. There's bowling.
Right.
Oh, boy,
Almost
yeah.
anything that people do sighted, it's available for the visually impaired and blind. There's an
Okay.
organization, not necessarily in Michigan. Sometimes they aren't located here, but I would say almost anything that you would want to do, it's available.
Now, do you find yourself going to a lot of conferences in other states and everything, picking up information, bringing it back to upgrade your book or just to add on?
What we've done to date, because funds are limited, is we've mostly gone to conferences that are in our state.
Okay.
But when we go, we're always two things: looking for more information, and looking to have other people know about us, so that they will call and request a copy of the directory. This is the organization. We have another board member, but basically Gary does the work. I mean, he's at home and he's answering the phone and he's mailing out the directory, and so we
Now, do you
need help.
You go out and do public speaking and things of that nature to promote?
Yes.
Okay, so church functions or conferences of any sort? Okay,
We've been
workplace?
to churches, and we attend the Lions Club conventions, and we spoke at the Macular Degeneration and Retinal Disease Symposium in Ann Arbor this year, and
Okay.
we were flanked by two of the top researchers in the field, and we felt pretty honored to be there.
Wonderful.
It's very exciting.
Okay. Now, what about physicians? Are there any physicians in your booklet at all, or physicians just rather stay neutral?
And we have two categories. We have three. We have pediatric ophthalmologists that deal with the young kids, obviously, and then certified low vision optometrists, which they've gone through testing to be to know more of the devices to help people that are visually impaired. And then we have low vision clinics for people to know.
Okay. So now, is any eyeglass companies in particular, like anybody in particular, eyeglass companies that
No,
want to
we
be involved?
well, I take that back. Eschenbach is not an eyeglass, but they do manufacture magnifiers.
Okay.
And then all of your closed circuit TV companies are in there.
Very helpful. Okay. Well, Kathy and Gary, let's go to commercial break and come back to the second half. We'll be right back.
That was 13.
If you have diabetes, there are a world of reasons to get a dilated eye exam. Because diabetic eye disease doesn't have to take away your sight. If you need any more reasons, just look around you.
Hi, welcome back to the second half of the show. For those of you who are just now joining us, we have the Visually Impaired Information Center, Inc. We have the president, Gary Gaynor, and vice president and publisher, Kathy Fleischner. Hi, as we were. Now, this book, I had a chance to look over the book while we went to a commercial break, and I'm hoping that we can get a pretty good shot at this book because I noticed through here that you have nice subtitles so that a person can easily break it down and know what's what. Okay, such as guide dog schools. Okay, now if I'm looking for, once again, I have a 10-year-old son. He's very young and everything. I have no idea what to start him off in. Can I call you guys and say, hey, I don't know if I should put my son in regular school and know that he cannot have a pet, or should I call and say, can you refer me to a guide dog school and they can tell me if my son can utilize a dog at that young age?
Right. What we do is we like as Kathy said, we don't refer people. We try to let them know of all the things that are available, and we try to point them in the direction that we think they can get their answer.
Okay.
We make sure that they get a copy of the directory so that they can make their own decisions too, but some people do just need a little help on that one question, and so we, coming from I'm not a trained educator for the visually impaired, so it's just from personal experience and from the people that I know, and we just try to give them as much information as possible.
Okay. Now, what is the age criteria? Is there an age group that you work with selectively?
Well, actually, that's really interesting. I'm glad you asked that, because one of the things that we're very proud of is that we have information in the directory for all age groups. As a matter of fact, one of the youngest families that we've been able to help, a mom called because her 18-month-old baby had a visual problem, and so she called to get information.
And how old was the
87.
87. An 87-year-old gentleman called. Actually, I think we've had an 87-year-old woman and an
Right.
87-year-old gentleman call. And that was thrilling to us, because the whole point is you're never too old to find out something new, to try something different. There's information out there for all age groups.
Right. They called for themselves too.
Right.
It wasn't their family or anything calling, and it is important that people realize that there's something out there for everyone. You just have to get off and do it, because there's so many things that you can do. And whether it's, we had a woman that asked at a symposium that we were at about Braille sheet music, that they were amazed that there's actually, for the performing arts, we have ideas, and in fact in the next directory we'll have more. It isn't just, and I love recreation, like I said earlier, but the computer, finding out that you can work a computer without seeing it.
Okay.
There's so many things. You just, there's no stopping if you want to.
Right.
We have a fairly large support group listing in the directory, which is also very helpful to a lot of people. Some people get to the point where they don't feel a support group would necessarily help them anymore, and yet there are a lot of people out there that still feel that that would be the best thing for them, to be able to discuss with other people going through the same problems and in the same situation.
Now, what about transportation? Do you have any working relationship with bus services or cabs or any particular transportation mode?
That is the hardest part.
Okay.
And every city tends to have its own. Like in Livonia, that we have dial-a-ride cab, where if you get a price break on the cab. But then in other cities they have dial-a-ride, which is a regular bus service. But SEMTA gives a break on the price, but what we suggest is that you call City Hall in your area, or even if call your churches or call the service groups in your area, because transportation is the hardest. We don't have a great mass transit.
No. And that's the breakdown in a person's life if you don't have transportation. Even if you are at a point where you discontinue working, but you still want to be able to get out and about, and do things for yourself instead of waiting for someone to come home or someone to deliver. And if the transit system would, strengthen its ability to support persons with disabilities of various natures, then we would have more people working, we'd have more people in school, and we would be better off knowing that this person isn't deteriorating because they can't get around.
Right.
Half of the disability can be based on what's in your mind, the mobility to do for yourself and wanting to do for yourself. And with books like this and people like yourselves, this helps in a lot of areas. It's not just visual, it's other areas that's involved in here too.
Right.
And so, I think the transit system, hopefully they'll see this. They should pick up on some notes from persons with disabilities and try to incorporate, the service inside their system and make it a better quality service.
The hardest part is transportation, and most people that I talk to on the phone, especially the elderly the older population with macular degeneration and things, it's that giving up driving. It's giving up that independence.
Right.
And I guess I haven't driven now in 21 years.
Okay.
And 19 years, excuse me. I should remember. But, don't be afraid to ask people. People are really willing to help you, and and check out the other sources too with the City Hall, because there are ways around it. You just have to be a little more proactive.
Aggressive.
Right?
Oh yeah.
Ask.
Yeah. Now, is there a phone number that someone can contact reach you by?
Our organization number is 734-421-6599.
Okay, okay. And if we want to write to you or whatever, is there an address where they can write, or what do
The
they do?
Visually Impaired Information Center, Inc.,
Okay.
P.O. Box 51207, Livonia, Michigan, 48151-5207.
Okay. Now you're a 24-hour service.
No.
Okay. Well,
Usually it's Monday through Friday,
Okay.
9 to 5.
Okay.
And we have a recorder if for some reason there isn't someone there to answer the phone, leave a message, and someone will get back with them very quickly.
Okay. You got to sleep sometime.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, okay. So Monday through Friday, I can easily call you and say, hey, I'm in need of such and such.
Yes.
Is that- What about the school board? How are you doing with the schools? Are any of the schools, very helpful in acceptance to this type of program?
Yes, it's getting better all the time. As the hardest part is getting the word out. That's why we're thankful for this opportunity, that the directory even exists. And so the school boards around the state are getting copies from us and getting them to the younger population.
Actually, we're kind of working at both sides. We have a category in the directory for the intermediate school districts in Michigan, so that if someone gets the directory, they know they can find out what area they should call first. Because it isn't, if it's a child who has a visual impairment, they don't necessarily have to be school age in order for the school district to help them. So at
okay.
any age, you can contact your intermediate school district. And then we've also done a lot of mailings, and we try to do a lot of different marketing efforts so that the community knows that it's available so that they can call us. And actually, there have been several schools who call us and have requested several copies, and we get them out to them, and then they distribute them to students in their area.
Wonderful.
So it works both ways.
So it could be university, it could be middle school, preschool, high school. I think that the school board would benefit if they would have this material in advance before the school actually starts, so they know if they have encountered a student that has, visually impairment, that they can be prepared to relate to that student,
Exactly.
and prepare the administration to work in support of that student, and companies too. So do you get a chance to go to jobs and everything, talk about like workshops? Do you do workshops at employment services or anything? Or have you gotten to that point
Well,
yet?
not yet.
But that's something
Okay.
that Gary has really wanted to do.
Right. I would love to see a copy at least in every personnel department or human resources, now that it's called that. And because when I went to mine, they just said, well, if you're losing your vision, that's all we know.
Sorry, folks.
They didn't know anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay.
And,
yeah. Companies are. I don't know if it's in their laws that they just don't really have the ability to want to accept a person with a disability, or if it's personal. I'm not sure, but I look at it as though eventually, if it's not them themselves that's going to encounter a situation like this, it could be another family member of their own.
Right.
And you should want to be more helpful,
Right.
in dealing with people, period, so that in case something happens to someone in your own home, you'd be more empathetic, and you can understand better. Not just, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, you take
Right.
care, and we'll write you and call you sometime and check on you. Companies should be better than
It
that.
goes back to the same problem which is the reason why we started the directory.
Okay.
People don't know. I couldn't tell you how many times people have said to us, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing in the whole world. Why didn't I know about this before? People didn't know about it before because there was no such thing. I think I can honestly say that this is a one-of-a-kind directory. We haven't come across anything like this. There is another source out there, but it's very cumbersome. It's more like a reference desktop type of information resource guide.
Okay.
It's not, user-friendly.
Okay.
So a lot of employers, they don't know that the directory is available. So they wouldn't know to have it in their files. And that's, like Gary said, that's what we keep trying to do, is get the information out there so that people know that there's a directory available, so that they can have it and then be able to give it to whoever needs it.
The one Kathy mentioned also is on, $149.
Yes.
And if you still have to know it's available, and that's what we're trying to overcome with the press releases and things that we've done, because even though that other one is out there, there's no one trying to tell you that it is there.
Okay. Now, has ADA been any assistance to you at all? America's Disability Act?
Not necessarily, but we
Right.
haven't really called them and asked them for any help or anything like that.
Okay.
Um,
Well, I know she had them in the directory,
Right.
so.
As so the
Okay.
people
Yes.
can, if they're having problems with employment or whatever, they'll have places
Okay.
to call.
Okay. Well, hopefully, and, before the year 2000 or by the year 2000, you all have gotten into the doors of employers, and they're, your phone's turning red just
Right.
from ringing off the hook. So companies can ask you, come out and speak to us. Let us know
Exactly.
what we can do. And it'll benefit all companies.
Right.
And I don't think people realize that you get a tax break. If you hire someone with a disability, more or less, and all the fringes around that person helps the company
Right.
and makes the company appear to be better, if not better, And also the working relationship between the two types of groups, disabilities and non-disabilities. And
Right.
that tightens up the arena to show that people do care for each other.
Right.
Right.
So hopefully you two will get out there and start knocking on the doors or calling
Spread the word.
Yeah.
Right. Call personnel and tell them, just as said, hey, let
Right.
me in. Okay.
One of the things we like to do the most is talk about the Director of Visually Impaired Services, so we don't usually say, oh no, we can't come. We can't
Right.
find anything to say about the directory.
Right.
We haven't had that happen
Even if
yet.
it
have we?
does take a year.
Exactly.
So you guys basically don't take any time off. You're almost all year round?
Working on the
Service.
directory?
Mm-hmm.
In some way or another, yes.
Right. In
Okay.
fact, our vacations are conferences.
Okay.
So
Okay. Now, as it grow, does the book just get larger, or is it volume 1, volume 2? How would you do it?
This is the first edition.
Okay.
First issue, I should say. And we're in the process right now. Gary's doing research and collecting more data, and we will start going through a verifying process very soon. And hopefully by October, November, the second issue of the Director of Visually Impaired Services will be ready for distribution.
All righty.
And one of our major criteria is to have as much information in the directory, but have it current and have it updated so that it's correct.
Okay.
Companies go in and out, and numbers change, and all
Right.
of that, and
Okay.
outdated information isn't any good.
Well, we would definitely like to keep a copy, and anyone who's actually listening or viewing the show can give us a call. And before we wrap up, can you give us your phone number again?
It's 734-421-6599.
Okay. Well, Kathy and Gary, I thank you both very much for coming on. Please feel free to come back and keep us posted on any changes in the book.
Okay.
And like I said, I'm your host, Marcia Florence, for Just As. As usual, you know what I always say. If you know someone with a disability, don't be afraid to ask. Just As. I'm your host. Thank you.